A muffled scream echoes through the concrete halls. Under flickering lamplight, a prisoner lies strapped to a metal table, chest heaving in panic. His eyes dart wildly as Japanese military doctors in blood-splattered aprons hover over him with clinical detachment. One doctor calmly selects a gleaming scalpel from a tray of sharp instruments. The victim's wrists and ankles strain against leather restraints. Sweat and tears mix on his face. "Please, no!" the man gasps, voice cracking with terror. The lead surgeon's expression remains ice cold. He nods to an assistant, ignoring the pleas. In this secret facility, mercy does not exist. With a terse command in Japanese, the doctor positions the scalpel at the prisoner's abdomen. The blade presses against quivering skin. This is not a nightmare or a horror film. It is real. It is Unit 731, the Japanese Imperial Army's most notorious human experimentation program. Here, between 1937 and 1945, countless victims will endure unspeakable agony in the name of science. Years earlier, the seeds of this hell were planted under the vision of General Shiro Ishii, a fanatical army doctor with a grand plan. It's the late 1930s, and Japan's war machine engulfs East Asia. Ishii persuades the top brass that victory may lie in biological and chemical weapons, plague bombs, cholera outbreaks, poisons, all perfected through human experimentation. Backed by the Imperial Army, he constructs a massive secret compound in Pingfang, Manchuria. 8 villages are torn down to make way for this city of nightmares. Officially, it is the Epidemic Prevention and Water Purification Department. In reality, it's Unit 731, a sprawling complex of laboratories, prisons, and crematoria. Within high walls topped with barbed wire, hundreds of prisoners can be held at any time. The stench of chemicals and death hangs in the air. General Ishii strides through the halls in his military uniform, exuding pride and ambition. Under his command are over 3,000 personnel, scientists, doctors, soldiers, all sworn to deadly secrecy. They refer to the men, women, and children in their cages, not as humans but as logs, maruta. To Ishii and his staff, these prisoners are nothing more than living test subjects, raw material for cruel experiments. The goal: to pioneer plague bombs and toxin weapons that could decimate enemy cities. The cost: unimaginable human suffering. In a dim cell block, dozens of prisoners huddle behind iron bars. They are civilians and POWs, mostly Chinese, along with Russians and Koreans, torn from their homes by the Japanese Army. Among them are men, women, even teenagers. Some are wounded soldiers, others simply unlucky villagers caught in dragnets. Fear is etched on every face. Guards in khaki uniforms patrol the corridor, rifles slung over their shoulders. The prisoners whisper rumors about this place. No one leaves alive. They don't even know its name, only that people vanish here. A guard bangs on the bars with a baton, barking orders. "Move, you logs," he snarls, as 2 soldiers yank a prisoner out. The dehumanizing word, logs, is how the staff justify the atrocities to come. To them, these lives are already forfeit, as good as pieces of wood to be chopped and burned. The unlucky prisoner is dragged down the corridor, kicking and pleading, while others shrink back in terror. In this facility, dawn to dusk is an unending procession of pain. Some prisoners endure starvation and beatings in their cells. Others are taken away, only for their agonized screams to echo through the halls moments later. Hope dies quickly here. Each captive understands. They are nothing but experimental fodder awaiting their turn on the table. In a white-tiled laboratory, a group of terrified prisoners are forced into steel cages like animals. Researchers in lab coats and gas masks prepare trays of bacteria cultures. Here, Unit 731 conducts its disease experiments. A doctor methodically injects one prisoner with a syringe full of Yersinia pestis, the Black Plague. Another victim is force-fed a liquid teeming with cholera bacteria. No anesthetics, no relief. They are meant to feel everything. The scientists step back to observe as high fever, vomiting, and delirium consume the subjects over days. Some victims groan and beg for water. Others bleed from the mouth as infection ravages them. In one corner, a plague flea bomb is tested on human targets. Prisoners are locked in a sealed chamber, then hundreds of infected fleas are released inside. Panic screams erupt as the fleas bite. Over the next week, doctors note how quickly the bubonic plague spreads among the group. Corpses pile up, and those who survive a bit longer are dissected alive to examine diseased organs. Outside the compound, these biological weapons are also unleashed on innocents. In 1940, Unit 731's aircraft dropped clay bombs filled with plague-infested fleas over Chinese cities like Ningbo and Chengde. Entire neighborhoods broke out with bubonic plague. Tens of thousands died in agony as the epidemic spread. People cowered in their homes as death buzzed down from the skies. The carnage was so effective that Ishii even schemed to launch plague attacks on the United States mainland in a last-ditch plan called Operation Cherry Blossoms at Night, a plan thankfully never realized. Through it all, the researchers of Unit 731 scribble in notebooks, pleased with their deadly data. For them, a successful experiment is measured in body counts. Back in the operating theater, the ultimate horror unfolds. Victims infected with diseases or wounded by weapons are routinely subjected to vivisection, live dissection without anesthesia. Under the unforgiving lights, a prisoner lies unconscious, from pain, not from any mercy of medicine, as a surgeon slices into his abdomen. The man's eyes flutter open mid-incision, and a guttural scream rips from his throat. He feels everything. Two orderlies firmly pin his arms as his body jerks against the restraints. The lead doctor, face splattered with blood, continues to cut with absolute focus. He begins removing organs one by one. First the spleen, then a portion of the liver, all while the patient is alive, heart pounding furiously. The rationale is to see the effects of disease on living organs, but it's nothing short of butchery. Shelves against the wall display grotesque souvenirs of past experiments. Jars of formaldehyde containing body parts, a severed head, a pair of disembodied hands, even the preserved fetus from a pregnant woman who was dissected alive. The air is thick with the coppery scent of blood. The victim's screams fade to a wet gurgle as shock sets in. Yet the surgeons remain utterly emotionless. They take notes as the life drains from the prisoner's eyes, treating him less like a man and more like a frog on a dissection pan. When at last the mangled body falls silent, the staff simply wipe their tools and prepare for the next experiment. Specimen 23, terminated. Prepare the next subject, a doctor says coolly, peeling off his bloody gloves. In Unit 731's Infirmary of Terror, death is assembly line work. Winter in Manchuria can drop to -40 degrees, perfect conditions for frostbite experiments. In an outdoor courtyard under a frigid moon, two naked prisoners are marched out into the snow by laughing guards. Scientist Hisato Yoshimura, nicknamed the Devil Doctor, conducts these tests with eerie enthusiasm. The prisoners' arms are dunked into buckets of ice water. They yelp at the shock. Forced to stand exposed in the freezing wind, their wet limbs slowly freeze solid. Minutes pass like hours. The men's teeth chatter violently. Their skin turns blue-white. When Yoshimura judges the moment right, he strikes one prisoner's arm with a short stick. It emits a sharp crack, like hitting a frozen plank of wood. The victim howls as the flesh on his arm is solid ice, frozen to the bone. For nights on end, such tortures continue. Limbs are frozen, thawed and refrozen to study gangrene. One prisoner's fingers turn black and rot off after repeated cycles of frostbite. In one ghastly scene, Yoshimura places a 3-day-old infant's tiny hand into icy water, watching it frost over. On another occasion, he confines 2 shivering men outside until their bodies are hard as statues. They cling to each other, moaning in pain until death claims them. To Yoshimura, it's all just data. He later publishes a paper coolly quantifying the resistance index of frostbite. To the victims, it's a fate worse than death. Their cries fade into the cold night, ignored by their captors. In the quest to harden Japan's soldiers against winter warfare, Unit 731 has literally frozen people alive to see where and how the human body breaks. The depravity of Unit 731 knows no limits. Beyond disease and dissection, the researchers devise countless methods to push the human body past breaking point. Prisoners are locked in sealed pressure chambers. As the air thins, they claw at the walls and gasp for breath until their eyes burst from their skulls. Others are spun in giant centrifuges, whipped around until every bone snaps and life is extinguished. Some are taken to a yard, tied upside down from gallows, left hanging for hours until death by blood rushing to the head. How long will it take? The experimenters note calmly in their ledgers. Victims are electrocuted with high-voltage currents to observe the convulsions. They are dehydrated under scorching heat lamps until they die of thirst, their tongues cracked and swollen. Guards place prisoners in front of flamethrowers, then trigger the fire to watch human torches writhing on the ground. In gas chambers, children convulse violently on the floor while doctors with stopwatches time the spasms. No aspect of human suffering is off-limits. Every agonizing death is just a data point to be recorded. In one infamous test, a prisoner is sealed in a steel vacuum chamber. Outside, a doctor slowly turns a valve to suck out the air. The prisoner's ears bleed as pressure drops. Through the porthole window, his veins bulge, face purple. Suddenly, with a sickening pop, his eyeballs protrude and he collapses. The note in the logbook: subject died due to air embolism at X millimeters of mercury. These atrocities masquerade as science, but there is nothing scientific about the sadistic glee with which some of the unit's staff carry out their tasks. They have become technicians of torture, engineers of pain, and their experiments are building an arsenal of horror for the Imperial Army. The horrors are not confined to laboratory walls. Unit 731 also turns battlefields and villages into testing grounds. In a remote firing range at dawn, rows of living targets are staked into the ground. These are prisoners, tied to wooden posts, dispersed at measured intervals across an open field. A group of Japanese soldiers sets up mortar tubes and fragmentation bombs at one end. Scientists stand by with clipboards, eager to record the results. At a signal, a bomb is launched. Boom! The explosion shreds the nearest victims instantly. Farther ones scream as shrapnel lodges in flesh. Some are maimed but alive, moaning in agony. Observers coolly jot down notes on distance and lethality. They repeat the test again and again, adjusting angles, testing grenades versus bombs. Flamethrowers are also turned on chained prisoners. Gouts of flame engulf human bodies, turning them into charred husks while stopwatches tick. The smell of burnt flesh hangs in the air. Not even chemical weapons are off the table. In one trial, prisoners are locked in a gas chamber building as Unit 731 personnel donning respirators release toxic gas inside. Through small windows, they watch men claw at their throats, foaming at the mouth before collapsing. In another, victims in an open field are sprayed with anthrax and cholera aerosols to see how sickness spreads on the move. Unit 731's cruel playbook even extends to distributing poisoned food and candy to unsuspecting civilian populations, just to study the aftermath. Every new weapon, biological, chemical, or explosive, is perfected through field tests on live humans. The perpetrators feel untouchable, backed by their superiors in Tokyo. As they see it, these living targets are simply helping Japan develop the most fearsome arsenal in the world. And if thousands of innocents must die for it, so be it. August 1945. The world of Unit 731 is collapsing. The Allies are closing in. The Soviet army storms into Manchuria. Inside the compound, General Ishii issues panicked orders. Destroy everything. Years of hideous secrets must not be uncovered. The incinerators roar to life day and night. Prisoners, all remaining logs, are slaughtered by gunshot or poison. The sounds of gunfire echo as soldiers execute men and women still in their cells. Their bodies are doused in gasoline and burned in pits. A 14-year-old Japanese apprentice, forced to assist, carries armfuls of charred bones to be ground into ash. He does not yet grasp that he is erasing evidence of monstrous war crimes. Laboratories are torched, files and records shoveled into flaming drums. The state-of-the-art germ factories and cages are rigged with explosives. In a thunderous blast, Unit 731's main building is blown up to rubble, burying countless remains within. Black smoke billows into the sky, visible for miles. Ishii and a handful of top officials flee under cover of chaos, carrying their precious research data with them. By the time Soviet troops arrive at the site, they find only ruins, scorched earth, twisted metal, and a few bewildered low-level staff who failed to escape. The human lab rats of Unit 731 have all been silenced. The Japanese army has effectively wiped away the physical proof of their atrocities, but the horror cannot be completely hidden. The truth will smolder beneath the ashes, waiting to be exposed in time. When World War II ends, the atrocities of Unit 731 remain shrouded in secrecy. Victorious Allied forces begin investigating, shocked by rumors of a Japanese Auschwitz in Manchuria. The Soviet Union holds a war crimes trial in 1949, exposing some of Unit 731's ghastly deeds, but the accused receive only light sentences. In the West, the truth is even more suppressed. The United States, locked in a new Cold War with the Soviets, strikes a deal with the devil. In exchange for the unit's research data on biological warfare, American occupiers secretly grant immunity to General Ishii and his staff. In Wikipedia.org. No one will ever be tried in Tokyo for these crimes. Instead, many of the unit's doctors go on to have successful careers as businessmen, professors, even senior figures in Japan's medical industry. Ishii himself lives in quiet retirement until 1959, never facing justice. The victims of Unit 731 became casualties not just of Japan's military ambition, but of post-war politics. For decades, this dark chapter was buried, but truth has a way of emerging. Over time, former Unit 731 personnel, racked by guilt or simply unable to keep the nightmares inside, began to talk. Their testimonies, along with unearthed records, revealed the full scope of Unit 731's barbarity. The world learned how at least 3,000 people were killed in the experiments, and how hundreds of thousands more Chinese civilians likely perished from the biological weapons developed here. Today, the site of Unit 731 in Harbin is a museum, its crumbling halls preserved as a grim monument. Tourists walk the corridors where screams once rang, now silent. Dust motes drift in sunlight through broken windows, illuminating old torture chambers. It stands as a reminder and a warning. The story of Unit 731 is not a Hollywood horror tale. It's a real nightmare etched in history. It forces us to confront the horrifying depths of cruelty that humans can sink to under the guise of patriotism, science, and war. The cold-blooded crimes of Unit 731 were long hidden, but they will never be forgotten. The ghosts of its victims silently demand that we remember, that we never allow such atrocities to happen again.